What would you do if a child was being humiliated in public and no one stood up for him? At a quiet gas station in the middle of nowhere, a shy black boy was just trying to give his hero a simple drawing, until a group of bikers showed up to ruin everything. They mocked him, they mocked kindness, and they had no idea someone else was watching, someone who doesn't need to raise his voice to command respect. What happened next didn't go viral because it was loud, it went viral because it was right. If you believe the world needs more quiet courage and real justice, hit the like button. And if you want to see more stories like this, real or inspired, subscribe now. You're exactly the kind of person this channel is made for. Where are you watching this video from? We love hearing from you and always read every message. The sun had just begun its descent, casting a golden hue over the quiet outskirts of a small rural town. A dusty two-lane road wound its way past a lonely gas station, barely lit by a flickering neon sign. The breeze carried the scent of asphalt, gasoline, and late spring blossoms. A black vintage motorcycle glided into the lot, its engine purring low before falling silent. Keanu Reeves stepped off, dressed in worn jeans, a plain black t-shirt, and boots that had seen miles. His presence was unassuming yet grounded, like a man searching for peace, not attention. Keanu scanned the station, noticing how time seemed to slow in places like this. He moved with quiet purpose, heading toward the vending machine for a bottle of water. His movements were fluid, practiced, like someone used to observing before acting. A light sweat traced the edge of his brow, remnants of the long ride, but his expression was calm, not tense, not rushed, just present. A man alone with his thoughts. Inside the convenience store, the clerk barely looked up. Keanu nodded politely, paid in cash, and stepped back out into the warm twilight. He leaned against the side of the building, unscrewing the bottle cap slowly. Behind him, the sound of laughter echoed, young, innocent laughter, coming from a small group of kids near the air pump. He glanced over without moving too much, just watching, curious. One of the kids, a shy African-American boy named Tyler, held something close to his chest, a folded piece of paper. As the boy turned, the drawing came into view. It was a colored sketch of Keanu Reeves as a superhero, his face serious but kind, cape flowing behind him. At the top were the words, "You're my hero." The boy looked at Keanu, eyes wide, unsure whether to approach. Keanu tilted his head, giving Tyler the smallest of smiles. No trace of arrogance, no sense of celebrity, just human connection. The boy took a hesitant step forward, then paused, gripping the drawing tighter. His friends whispered behind him, but he stood still, trying to muster the courage to walk up. Keanu didn't push. He waited. The air buzzed gently with crickets now, and the hum of a distant truck passed down the road. This was a moment suspended in stillness, a quiet intersection between a famous man and an unseen boy. And yet, in that silence, something powerful had begun to stir, something no one else in the lot had noticed. Not yet. Tyler finally took the leap. With the drawing pressed against his chest like a fragile treasure, he walked toward Keanu in small, deliberate steps. His sneakers made soft scuffs against the concrete, and his breathing quickened, not from fear, but from hope. When he reached just a few feet away, he stopped and held out the paper with trembling hands. His voice was barely a whisper as he said, "I made this for you." Keanu looked down, his eyes softening. He crouched slowly to be on Tyler's level, not to appear approachable, but because it felt right. He took the drawing gently, as if it were more valuable than any award or fan letter. The corners of his mouth curled into a sincere smile. "You made this?" he asked, his voice low and kind. Tyler nodded, barely blinking. "It's beautiful," Keanu added. "You're an artist." The boy's eyes lit up, the tension in his small frame easing as if someone had finally seen him. Around them, a few passers-by started to notice the interaction. A mother filling her gas tank smiled faintly. A teenager pulled out his phone, but Keanu remained focused on Tyler. "You know," he said, "being a hero doesn't mean being strong. It means being kind. Just like you were when you made this." Tyler's lips parted slightly, like he'd heard something he didn't realize he needed. "You really think so?" he asked. Keanu nodded. "Absolutely." He gently touched the boy's shoulder, grounding the moment in real connection. Tyler's posture straightened, not out of pride but a quiet dignity starting to take root. A kind of courage that had nothing to do with fighting. The small group of children behind Tyler began whispering more excitedly now. One of them muttered, "That's really him." But Keanu didn't break the moment with celebrity acknowledgement. He didn't sign autographs, he didn't pose, he just handed the drawing back and said, "You should keep this. It's a reminder that you already have everything you need to be great." The light above them flickered once, and a warm breeze rustled the corner of the paper. Tyler looked at the drawing differently now, as a symbol of something bigger than fandom. Keanu stood again slowly, but this quiet act of recognition had already planted something deep in the boy's heart. And not everyone around appreciated that kind of strength. Keanu remained standing beside Tyler, the drawing still in the boy's hands, but now held with quiet pride. He leaned down slightly, his voice low enough to feel like a secret, but loud enough to be heard by those beginning to gather. "Tyler," he said gently, "you didn't have to make that drawing. But you did. That's what real heroes do. They create something good even when no one asks them to." Tyler's eyes glistened slightly. He looked up, his lips parted in awe. "I just wanted to say thank you," he replied. Keanu nodded once, then glanced at the small crowd that had started forming around them. A few phones were out now recording, but it didn't feel invasive. It felt reverent. The energy had shifted. There was no performance, only presence. The late sunlight reflected off a windshield nearby, casting golden rays across the gas station lot. Keanu took a slow step back, giving Tyler space to feel seen without being overwhelmed. "If more people were like you," Keanu said with a soft smile, "the world would be a safer place." It wasn't a compliment. It was a truth, dropped like a pebble into a still pond. A young mother nearby wiped a tear discreetly. The cashier inside the convenience store paused behind the glass, watching with a rare stillness. Even Tyler's friends had gone quiet, unsure how to process a moment that felt too real for their usual games. For once no one laughed, no one teased. They just watched. Then Keanu looked around, not paranoid, just alert. Something shifted in his stance, not dramatic, not loud, but instinctive. His eyes settled on a group across the lot, several rough-looking men sitting on their bikes, drinking from bottles wrapped in paper. They hadn't been watching before, but now they were. Keanu returned his gaze to Tyler and said with calm finality, "Keep being kind. That's the strongest thing you can do." The words echoed in Tyler's mind, though the boy didn't understand why they suddenly felt like a shield. What none of them realized was that those words, small, humble, and heartfelt, had just drawn the attention of something dark lurking nearby. Across the parking lot, the sound of metal clinking against pavement echoed faintly. A gang of bikers leaned against their rusted motorcycles, half-drunk bottles resting by their boots. They were known in town as the Rattlesnake Riders, a group that thrived on intimidation and discomfort. Their leader, Roy, was a burly man with a thick beard, dark sunglasses, and a permanent scowl etched into his leathery face. Roy squinted toward the gas station, chewing a toothpick slowly. "Here's that who I think it is," he mumbled, pushing off his bike with a grunt. One of the others chuckled. "Pretty boy movie star playing saint?" Roy spat on the ground and growled, "These Hollywood types think they can walk anywhere and be worshipped. Makes me sick." The others muttered in agreement, feeding off the bitterness in the air. They weren't drawn by fame. They were drawn by resentment. The sight of a man like Keanu, showing grace in a moment of quiet kindness, stirred something uncomfortable in them. Roy took another swig from his bottle and shoved it into a trash bin, not caring when it missed and shattered. Then he started walking toward the station, his boots heavy, his steps deliberate. Keanu hadn't moved. He felt the energy shift, like a storm changing direction. His body stayed relaxed, but his senses sharpened. Tyler instinctively stepped closer to him, his drawing now folded against his chest like armor. Keanu didn't look back at the gang. He didn't need to. He already knew. One of the bikers muttered something crude under his breath as they approached. Another laughed too loud, forcing everyone at the station to glance nervously in their direction. Roy led the pack, his eyes locked on Keanu like a challenge waiting to be accepted. The tension in the air thickened. Even the kids could feel it. Still, Keanu didn't speak. He simply placed one hand gently on Tyler's back, guiding him slightly behind his leg. No sudden moves, no raised voice, just presence. But the rattlesnake riders had already decided this wasn't going to end quietly. And they weren't ready for the kind of silence Keanu carried. Roy's boots scraped against the concrete as he closed the distance. His voice rang out, loud and theatrical. "Well, well, if it isn't John Wick himself," he sneered, arms spread wide like he was stepping on a stage. The gang behind him laughed, their amusement echoing like a challenge. "Didn't expect to find a movie star playing daddy daycare at a dump like this." Keanu didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He kept his gaze soft, his posture relaxed, but his entire being was alert. Tyler stood frozen, unsure whether to hide or speak. The drawing trembled in his hands. Roy noticed and pointed at it with mock horror. "What's this?" "A fan letter." "Let me guess. Dear Keanu, save me from the big bad world." He ripped out a harsh laugh, tossing his head back. One of the bikers leaned in toward Tyler and muttered, "Must be nice to have a bodyguard who reads scripts for a living." The words dripped with contempt. Tyler's cheeks flushed red, not from fear but from something deeper. Shame, confusion. Embarrassment in front of the one person he had looked up to. His hands tightened around the paper, now creased and bent. Keanu exhaled slowly through his nose. Still, he didn't speak. That silence unnerved the gang more than any insult could have. Roy stepped closer, too close, pushing the boundary with a false grin. "Say something, pretty boy. You gonna cry? Or is this where you do that slow-motion kung fu crap?" More laughter followed, but it was starting to feel forced, strained. Then Tyler did something no one expected. He stepped forward. His voice cracked, but it carried weight. "He's more of a man than you'll ever be." The air shifted instantly. The gang's laughter stopped like a needle dragged across a record. Even Roy blinked in momentary disbelief, his jaw tightening around a smirk that was quickly losing its power. The moment hung in the air like a wire stretched tight. Roy leaned down, face inches from Tyler's, and whispered with venom, "You got guts, kid. Let's see if you still got 'em when your hero's gone." But Keanu hadn't gone anywhere. And in the silence that followed, something ancient stirred behind his eyes, something steady, unshakable, and dangerously calm. Tyler's breath hitched, but he didn't step back, not this time. Roy's shadow loomed over him, the threat in his words hanging heavy in the air. But Tyler's feet stayed planted. His hands were still shaking, but his chin was lifted. He looked Roy in the eye and said again, this time louder, clearer, "You're not scary, you're just loud." It wasn't defiance. It was clarity. The rattlesnake riders froze for a moment, unsure whether to laugh or get angry. One of them snorted, trying to break the tension. But it didn't land. Roy's expression twisted. He didn't like being challenged, especially not by a kid. His hand moved to grab Tyler's shoulder, fingers twitching with impulse. That was the moment Keanu moved. Without a word, Keanu stepped between them. His body blocked Tyler completely, like a door quietly closing to the storm outside. His voice was low, even, and unmistakably final. "That's enough." He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. But the tone made Roy pause. It was the sound of a man who knew exactly what he was capable of and didn't need to prove it. Tyler backed away a few steps, now behind Keanu, his breath still catching in his chest. But his eyes were locked on the back of the man who had just shielded him without hesitation. The crowd, which had grown to about 20 people now, stood in stunned silence. Even the phones had stopped recording. No one wanted to miss what was happening, live. Roy took a step back, chuckling nervously. "So this is how you play it, Reeves? Hiding behind kids now?" But his laugh didn't echo anymore. It fell flat. He could feel the power slipping. Keanu stood like a wall of still water, calm but deep, dangerous. The gang shifted uncomfortably, sensing the balance changing. A beat passed. Then Keanu turned his head just slightly, speaking not to Roy but to Tyler. "You did good," he said softly. Bravery isn't being unafraid. It's speaking up even when you are. Tyler's chest rose as those words settled. And now the air was charged, not just with tension but with something bigger, something that was about to break. Keanu stood still, his presence absorbing the tension like a sponge. His posture hadn't changed, yet everything about the moment had. No words were needed. His silence wasn't passive. It was weighty, like the calm before an inevitable shift. Roy's smile had vanished, replaced by something harder to maintain: doubt. The gang instinctively looked to their leader, waiting for his next move. But Roy hesitated. Something about Keanu's stillness made even the wildest among them second-guess their confidence. It was the kind of silence that didn't ask for power. It commanded it. He wasn't threatening. He wasn't posturing. But somehow, he was in control. Tyler, standing a few feet behind, stared up at Keanu with wide, unblinking eyes. He had seen strength before, in movies, in stories. But this was different. This was real. It wasn't loud. It didn't punch first. It protected without ego, shielded without pride. It was the kind of strength that couldn't be faked because it came from a place beyond muscles or fame. Roy finally stepped forward, pushing the invisible boundary. He got right up in Keanu's face, chest puffed out, voice low and bitter. "What are you gonna do, huh?" "Gonna preach me to death?" The gang chuckled, but it sounded more like an echo of what used to work. Keanu simply tilted his head, not in mockery, but in quiet calculation. His jaw was set, his eyes steady. "I don't need to do anything," Keanu replied softly, "but I won't let you hurt him." The words were so simple yet so final. He didn't curse. He didn't provoke. And yet his calm felt like thunder, rolling beneath the surface. One of the bikers took a nervous step back. Even the people watching could feel it now. Something was about to crack. In that instant, Tyler reached forward and lightly touched the back of Keanu's coat, as if grounding himself in the safety he represented. Keanu didn't turn, but he knew. The moment had shifted. The next move wouldn't be his, but he was ready, not because he wanted to fight, but because he had no intention of stepping aside. Have you ever seen someone step up for another person without saying a single word? If this moment moved you even just a little, hit the like button. It's one of the best ways to support stories that stand for justice, courage, and quiet strength. And if you believe the world needs more of this energy, compassion without ego, protection without violence, subscribe to this channel. We share real-life inspired stories that remind us all what true character looks like. Where are you watching this video from? We love hearing from you and always read every message. Roy's patience snapped. He clenched his fist and swung with a wide, angry punch aimed straight at Keanu's jaw. But it didn't land. In one fluid motion, Keanu stepped aside, letting the blow pass harmlessly by, like a gust of wind hitting a wall. He didn't retaliate. He simply turned his body, now fully facing the gang with Tyler behind him, untouched. There was a pause, as if even gravity took a breath. The other bikers, sensing their leader's embarrassment, surged forward to reclaim dominance. One moved in first, raising his arm to shove Keanu back. Keanu's hand caught the man's wrist mid-air, twisted it downward, and guided him to the ground without a word. The biker groaned, more surprised than hurt. A second attacker tried from behind, but Keanu turned just enough to block the incoming strike with his forearm. He spun, controlled, and pushed the man sideways into a trash bin. The crowd gasped, but Keanu's expression never changed. There was no anger, no noise, only purpose. Tyler watched, stunned, not because Keanu was fighting, but because he made it look like stillness in motion. Roy, recovering from his missed punch, roared with frustration. "Get him!" he shouted, voice cracking with ego. Two more riders charged together, hoping to overwhelm by force. Keanu took one down by shifting his own weight, using the man's momentum against him. The second lunged forward, but met only air as Keanu pivoted, letting him stumble into a parked bike. The scene was electric now. People behind the gas pumps were ducking for cover, though no one had been truly hurt. Yet. Keanu's restraint was intentional, his moves clean. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't violent, it was protective. He never stepped forward to escalate. He only responded when the line was crossed. Every gesture was calculated to end the conflict, not prolong it. Tyler, crouched behind a nearby post, held his breath. His drawing had fallen to the ground, forgotten, but his eyes were fixed on Keanu, wide with awe. Not because Keanu was winning, but because he was defending without hate. And for the first time in his life, Tyler was watching someone fight not to conquer, but to protect. The gas station had transformed into a tense arena, but Keanu moved like he was in slow motion. Every step intentional, every action deliberate. He wasn't flustered, he wasn't out of breath. The contrast between him and the chaos around him was jarring. It wasn't just that he was defending himself, it was how he did it. Calm, controlled, almost graceful. One of the fallen bikers tried to get up, but Keanu gently placed a hand on his shoulder and pushed him back down with minimal force. It wasn't humiliation, it was a message. Stay down. This doesn't need to go further. The biker met his eyes for a split second and saw no rage, only clarity. It was more disarming than any punch. Roy paced on the edge of the scene, his fists clenched and eyes scanning for the next move. He couldn't believe this was happening. 5 against 1, and his crew was losing, not from brute strength, but from something harder to fight. Discipline. "You think you're better than us?" Roy spat out. But the question wasn't really for Keanu. It was for himself. Keanu didn't answer. Instead, he stepped back slightly to check where Tyler was. The boy had moved to a safer corner behind the vending machine, clutching the crumpled drawing again. Keanu gave him the faintest nod, a silent signal that everything was okay, that he was still in control. Tyler's breathing slowed, just enough to feel safe again. The onlookers had stopped recording. Now, they were just watching. No one wanted to miss it. A moment of real-world justice that didn't involve sirens or speeches, just quiet integrity holding its ground. The gas station clerk had come to the door, eyes wide. Even passing cars had slowed on the road, drivers staring at the unexpected standoff. Roy saw his influence slipping away like oil on wet pavement. This wasn't just about ego anymore. It was about power, and the fact that it was no longer his. And nothing scared men like Roy more than realizing they weren't the strongest man in the room, especially when the strongest man didn't need to say a word. Roy's pride had been chipped away with each failed attempt to dominate. His men lay scattered, winded, embarrassed, and silent. The crowd was no longer afraid of the gang. They were inspired by Keanu's calm control. That shift, that invisible transfer of power, made Roy snap. He reached into his leather vest and pulled out a folding knife, the blade clicking open with a sharp metallic sound that cut through the quiet like thunder. Gasps erupted from the crowd. A woman screamed. Someone ducked behind a gas pump, shielding their child. But Keanu didn't flinch. He didn't assume a fighting stance or widen his eyes. He simply shifted one foot, grounding himself. His gaze never left Roy's. His breathing stayed measured. He had seen this before in films, in life, and he knew how it ended. But this time he wasn't acting. Roy lunged, knife aimed at Keanu's chest with all the desperation of a man who had already lost. But Keanu was faster, not in speed, in clarity. In one clean motion, he sidestepped the attack, grabbed Roy's wrist, and twisted it downward. The knife hit the ground with a metallic clatter. Keanu's arm wrapped around Roy's shoulder, guiding him into a lock that pinned him to the pavement without excess force. Roy struggled like a cornered animal, but there was no escape. Keanu's grip didn't tighten in rage. It held steady, like a teacher correcting a mistake without cruelty. "It's over," Keanu said quietly, not for the crowd, not for drama, but for Roy to hear, to understand, to feel what surrender without humiliation could look like. The silence was deafening. The only sounds were Roy's ragged breaths and the distant buzz of cicadas. No one moved. Tyler clutched his drawing like it was sacred now. The bystanders held their breath, unsure whether they'd just witnessed violence or grace. And Keanu stayed there, kneeling beside Roy, until the man stopped fighting, not because he was hurt, but because he had no more fight left in him. And in that stillness, something beautiful happened. People didn't cheer. They understood. Justice had been served, not with revenge but with restraint. And Keanu had reminded everyone watching that strength isn't proven by dominance, but by what you choose not to do when you have the power. Just as Roy's body finally relaxed under Keanu's steady hold, red and blue lights flashed across the gas station. 2 squad cars pulled in fast but smooth, sirens off as if the officers already knew the chaos had passed. Uniformed police stepped out, hands hovering near their belts but not drawn. They scanned the scene, saw the scattered bikers, the crowd, and then Keanu. One officer recognized Roy immediately. "We've been looking for him," he muttered to his partner. They moved in quickly, not wasting time. "Step back, sir," one said to Keanu. He nodded silently, releasing Roy without resistance. The officers handcuffed the biker leader while reading out loud a list of warrants: assault, theft, illegal weapons possession, the kind of charges that had stacked up for years without justice. As Roy was lifted off the ground, he avoided Keanu's gaze. Not out of shame, out of confusion. He'd just been overpowered by someone who hadn't even tried to punish him. The restraint had stung more than any fist ever could. His silence spoke volumes as he was led to the police car, finally subdued in every sense. Meanwhile, Keanu turned toward Tyler, who had stepped out cautiously from behind the vending machine. In his hand was the folded drawing, creased, a little dusty, but still whole. Keanu gave him a small nod, and the boy ran to his side. One of the officers, now realizing who Keanu was, said softly, "You handled that better than most of us would have," but Keanu only gave a slight shrug. Just made sure the kid got home safe. The officers began gathering statements, but most people didn't say much. The scene had already explained itself. What they'd witnessed wasn't just a man defending a child, it was something quieter, more profound. Keanu didn't seek validation, he didn't even stick around to be thanked. He simply picked up the drawing Tyler had dropped and brushed off the dust gently. Then, like smoke after a fire, the crowd began to dissolve. The danger was gone. The lesson had been absorbed. And Keanu, as always, was preparing to leave before anyone could turn him into the headline. For him, the story wasn't about him. It was about what you choose to stand for when no one is watching, and when everyone is. As the dust settled and the sirens faded into the distance, Keanu quietly walked back toward his motorcycle. He didn't check his phone. He didn't wave to the crowd. His focus was steady, calm, the kind of man who didn't need a spotlight to know his worth. But just before he could mount the bike, he heard a small voice behind him. "Wait," Tyler called out, clutching something in his hands. He jogged over, his steps unsure but determined. When he reached Keanu, he held out the drawing again, now carefully folded into the shape of a heart. "I want you to have it," he said softly. "You made it mean something." Keanu took the folded paper with both hands, as if it were made of glass. He didn't open it. He didn't analyze it. He just looked into Tyler's eyes and smiled. That quiet, grounded smile that said more than words ever could. Then he placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "Real heroes protect the quiet moments," he whispered. "You reminded me of that today." Tyler nodded slowly, blinking back the tears he didn't want to show. In that moment, he didn't see a celebrity. He saw a protector, a man who could have walked away, but didn't. A man who used strength not to shine, but to shield. Keanu gave him one last nod, then turned back toward his bike. The engine started with a low hum. Keanu didn't rev it. He didn't make an exit. He just slipped away into the fading light, the drawing tucked into his jacket. The boy stood there, watching until he was out of sight, and even after that, staring into the road as if holding on to the feeling just a little longer. And for those who stayed behind, the ones who had watched, who had recorded, who had felt something shift inside them, the moment would replay in their minds like a quiet movie they'd never forget. Not because of the fight, but because of the man who showed how to end one without ever becoming the villain. What made this story unforgettable wasn't the fight. It was the silence. The kind of silence that stands between someone vulnerable and someone cruel. Keanu didn't come to that gas station looking to be a hero, but he left as one, in the eyes of a boy who now knows what real strength looks like. Because strength isn't loud, it doesn't need revenge. True strength is calm, it protects, and it walks away without needing applause. Now tell us, have you ever seen someone step up like this in real life? Someone who did the right thing when no one was watching? Share it in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. And if this touched you even a little, don't forget to like and subscribe. We've got more stories coming your way. Stories that remind us all what quiet heroism looks like.